Hello, Cougars. Today we're going to be talking about the modern version of classification. Last time we talked about how scientists were using physical traits, morphology is what we call it, to help group organisms according to features that were similar, that kind of thing. And through time, scientists have learned to think about the classification of organisms a little bit differently, to base it upon evolution, and to use some of the modern tools that we have that allow us to understand the changes, the DNA, that kind of thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. The activity you're going to be doing in just a few minutes is related to phylogenetic classification. We're going to begin with Carolus Linnaeus. We talked about Linnaeus last time. Linnaeus developed this hierarchical system of classification. Actually, we have added some levels to this compared to what Linnaeus used, but it's the same pattern. It's based upon the morphological characteristics of organisms. He also developed the binomial nomenclature. That's the two-name naming system of species like Homo sapiens or Puma concolor. That's our cougar. Our Kernside cougar would be Puma concolor. Charles Darwin came along 100 years after Linnaeus and added this idea of natural selection being a process by which species change over time. He presented the idea that all living things are related, having descended from a common ancestor. And he illustrated this with this drawing that you can see here as the tree of life, in which more closely related species are nearer to each other than more distantly related species. Gregor Mendel is famous. You guys learned about him in biology class. He demonstrated that traits are passed from parents to offspring. He quantified the inheritance of traits. Each offspring gets one factor for a trait for each parent. He actually worked at the same time that Darwin did, but neither of them, Mendel knew that Darwin was doing some important work. Darwin never learned about Mendel's work, and it might have made a rapid change in our understanding of biology at the time. It really took another, probably 50 or 70 years for the information for the two of them to kind of come together, and for scientists to recognize that if they could see what was causing those changes that was being passed from generation to generation, those changes that Darwin described, that they could use that to classify organisms. In the 1950s, James Watson and Francis Crick described the structure of the DNA molecule. They went on to do some important work in explaining how DNA is read when it's copied and things like that. Thousands of other scientists have worked on this problem since then, and they've gotten to the point where they recognize that gene sequencing can determine the order of nucleotide bases in the DNA of an individual member of a species. And that allows changes in that DNA sequencing to be seen. You can see the difference. And that's what causes the variation that Darwin said was an important portion of natural selection. So just over time, we've gotten increasing ability to be able to see the DNA and actually tell how it's affecting organisms as they change through time. This has led to this process called phylogenetics. In it, we're comparing the DNA between two species to determine their degree of relatedness. Okay? Darwin stated that all organisms are related. It allows scientists to confirm or modify the kind of morphological classifications that have been done for over 250 years since Linnaeus' time. So scientists can take a look at these organisms and say, okay, we've been classifying these in the same group. Let's take a look at their DNA and see if they really are as closely related as we thought they are. That's what you'll be learning about in the activity that you'll be carrying out a little bit later on today. Thank you very much for your attention.